Hey, thanks for joining me today. I thought we were going to have an intro here. That's why I'm looking around. Yeah, happy Sunday. Hope you're having a great weekend. And Universe, we will be back momentarily with some big news. And yes, this is David Krayden broadcasting to you live from our nation's capital. Be right back.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to...
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Now we're going to be talking ostriches again. Have a look at this. And of course, it's dedicated to Katie Pasitne and the Ostrich Farm family, who continues to be occupied by the federal government and continued to be absolutely, shall we say, terrorized? Yes, I would. Anyway, I invite you to have a look at my latest Substack. I just put this up this morning. This is based on my interview with former Agriculture Minister Gerry Ritz, who called the CFIA a poster child for the liberal attack on democracy. Now, Jerry's not optimistic this is going to turn out well, because he says this is a government that does not listen to the people, does not listen to reason. So in this interview, and I encourage you to go back a couple of days and watch this, he doesn't predict this is going to turn out well. I don't know how it's going to turn. We're going to continue to fight for righteousness and justice and what is good for Canada and for farmers and for ordinary Canadians. That's what we're fighting for here. So, but Gerry said some incredible things in this interview. And this is a guy who was Minister of Agriculture for 8 years under Stephen Harper, Prime Minister Stephen Harper. So it's well worth listening to, or you can read this article and get a good gist of what that interview was all about. So I'm going to be walking you through a number of slides here that explain why the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is not basing any of their authoritarian overreach on science. Folks, this has never had anything to do with science. It's always been politics from day one. Now, the other day I said that Katie sent me a copy of this, the first page anyway, of this warrant to search, and you're going to have to trust me because it's the best I can do with this JPEG. But I'm going to read through this to you. And like I said, I've asked Katie for pages 2 and 3, and at this time I don't know why she hasn't been able to send them. And I was talking to her this morning. She's not feeling the best, and this is why she's wasn't able to appear today, but she did say that it continues to be chaotic on the farm. And of course, now they're up to 3, possibly 4 arrests, depending upon who you talk to, or depending upon who you include in those arrests. But I'm going to read this to you. This is September 3rd, 2025, and this is the warrant to search that was given to the CFIA, which they are using on a daily basis to continue to harass this farm, occupy this farm. But notice, if you can, in the upper right-hand corner, there's no court file number. What does that mean? Potentially, this whole operation is based on an unlawful warrant to search. And a lot of the folks out there who are reading this are saying, hey, there's something seriously wrong with this. So I'm going to read as much as I have of this. This is 2. Inspectors and officers of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Whereas it appears on the affirmation of Heather June Willis, a public officer and inspector with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency of the City of Edmonton in the province of Alberta, that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the following offences or violations have been committed. Count 1, fail to notify a veterinary inspector. This is under the HOAA 5(1). On or between December 11, 2024 to December 28, 2024, Universal Ostrich Farms Incorporated, having ownership or possession, care, or control of an animal, failed to notify the nearest veterinary inspector of the presence of a reportable disease or toxic substance or a fact indicating its presence in or around the animal immediately after becoming aware of the presence or fact, contrary to Section 5(1) of the Health of Animals Act. Therefore, committing an offense pursuant to Section 65 of the Health of Animals Act or a violation pursuant to Section 7 of the Agriculture and Agri-Food Administrative Monetary Penalties Act. Here's count number 2. Fail to comply with the conditions of a notice. HAR 91.4(6). On or between December 28, 2024 to February 26, 2025, Universal Ostrich Farms Incorporated failed to comply with a notice requirement to quarantine in such manner that quarantine was breached. To wit, ostriches were not segregated by age and sex, fencing was not secure, personal protective equipment was not worn in the quarantine area, by containment protocols were not observed, wildlife was not prevented from commingling with ostriches, daily mortality logs were not provided to the CFIA, and permits were not sought for the movement of things off and into the quarantined area, contrary to Section 91.4(6) of the Health of Animals Regulations, thereby committing an offense pursuant to Section 65 of the Health of Animals Act, or a violation pursuant to Section 7 of the Agriculture and Agri-Food Administration Monetary Penalties. I say, we're not going to debate every point there at the moment, but there's something fishy about this document because it doesn't have a court file number. Here's why the CFIA has not been following science. Where's the science? This is the question we're asking here. Where's the science? Global Strategy for the Prevention and Control of Pathogenicity, Avian Influenza. Now, here's what the World Health Organization, which of course, this is what the CFIA claims to be following down to the last dot of an I and crossing of a T. Theory of change. Transform reflects a broader vision to ensure viable, safe poultry production that meets future market and animal welfare demands. So even the World Organization of Animal Health believes that animal welfare is important and is resilient to disease threats in a changing climate. This includes changing practices and policies by building partnerships and networks, sharing knowledge to support poultry farmers and traders in all contexts, strengthening public and private veterinary services, and supporting targeted research to provide cost-effective interventions. Laboratory capacity is needed to ensure accurate diagnosis in multiple species. Now, if you recall the other day when I was interviewing former Agriculture Minister Gerry Ritz, he said they've got this capacity right now. And he knows they do. So what else are they saying? Where's the science in all of this? Why do they have to kill, first of all, 399 birds? There's probably about 300 left, based on the observation we've been hearing the last week. Article 10.4.7. Recommendations for importations from a country, zone, or compartment free from high pathogenicity avian influenza. And this, by the way, I have to mention this. This applies to poultry. Ostriches are not poultry, and the ostriches are not going across the border being sold as a food product. So none of this is applicable. Veterinary authorities should require the presentation of an international veterinary certificate attesting that the poultry showed no clinical signs of avian influenza on the day of shipment. The poultry originated from a country, zone, or compartment free from high pathogenicity, avian influenza. The poultry originated from a flock that was monitored for avian influenza viruses and was found to be negative. Testing is allowed under the World Organization for Animal Health, and it's encouraged. The poultry are transported in new or appropriately sanitized containers. And once again, we're not talking poultry. We're talking ostriches, and we're not even talking about them being sent across the border. The CFIA is full of crap. Everything about it. They have treated the ostriches not just as poultry, but as a food product that's going to be sent overseas or across the border. And we saw that. Where is the science? Again, the impact and epidemiology of avian influenza differ widely among different regions of the world. And therefore, it is impossible to provide detailed recommendations for all situations. Article 10.4.26, surveillance, states that surveillance strategies must be based on the specific regional impact, considering factors like poultry-wide bird contract, biosecurity, and production system. This means that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to avian influenza surveillance. Wow. Put this all together, folks, and it adds up to the fact that even the CFIA has not been following the dictates, the guidelines, the recommendations of the globalist institution it claims to respect and admire and follow. The bottom line from all of this is that even the globalist entity of the World Organization for Animal Health says you can't go around killing every last bird because it's going to lead to catastrophe in the ecosystem. Not to mention the fact it's going to make food products disappear or go up so much in price they'll become impossible for people to purchase anymore. And this is what happened. And once again, I stress, what we've just read applies to poultry and poultry that's being shipped as food, neither of which applies to the ostriches. So the CFIA has never had a leg to stand on, and it knows that. And it's been lying about it all the time. Let's have a listen to the latest, or what Katie was saying yesterday. I want to preface this before I get to it, because like I say, she has been going through a very, very hard time. And here we go. Let's get started at the beginning here.
And I need to chat about, there was a lot of misinterpretation of what I was saying about Jim Kerr and what happened when he was pushing the food underneath the ground. What had happened was good people being pushed to doing things to take care of animals that are struggling and push food under a fence because we know that they're starving. And at the end of the day, that is just not right. That's on CFIA. CFIA should be feeding these animals enough. They should be taking care of these animals just like we do. They should be doing their job in taking care of our animals and feeding them properly. Jim did what anybody would have done, and that was pushing food under the fence because they were hungry. They wanted the food. What that did, though, was led to a consequence. And unfortunately, that consequence is that all of those ostriches got removed from that pen, and now we cannot see them anymore. So those ostriches are all removed, got pushed way further back, and the Canadian Food Agency removed them And now us as a family and everybody cannot enjoy seeing them, keeping an eye on them, and monitoring their weight and how they look. So it was just a simple statement of we cannot break that blue fence barrier. We can't do that because we jeopardize the powers of Canadian Food Inspection Agency getting to do whatever they want and punish us more. Again, Jim has been amazing, and I care about Jim and Thundra very much, and I understand why he did it. My statement was we just can't do that, because unfortunately it now led to more consequences, and then the next consequences is that we would lose the right to having people even in the field. It's this stupid game that we're playing with Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and it's not right. And they're playing with all of our hearts, with all of our minds, and it is absolutely unfair. What Jim did was absolutely the right thing, and I just want to clear that up. I don't know how it got mistaken or taken out of context. I'm sorry. It's been long days, and we're all feeling overwhelmed and tired. And so anyways, this is what Canadian Food Inspection Agency does. They keep pushing us to do what he did. I mean, he was doing the right thing. But unfortunately it had consequences. And so we just have to really respect that boundary while we fight this to the end, so that we don't lose any more privileges, and we don't lose the ostriches getting pushed out further where where we can't watch them. So I love all of you, and I hope everybody's having a good Saturday. I have come down with a little bit of a cold, but I'll be back on here later. God bless every one of you, and thank you for your continued prayers and love and support. And Jim, thinking about you, and you know that I hold a huge respect for you. This has been a long journey, and we've been on that together, and I have a huge respect for you. So lots of love, everybody, and I will talk to you soon.
So, of course, there have been more arrests in the last 24 hours. I think Katie put that out yesterday morning, and the cold has not gotten any better. So, as I said, she wasn't even really prepared to do any on-air interviews today, and I will hopefully that she'll feel better tomorrow. We can do something. But what's going on here with these arrests? It's another form of intimidation, and the fact that the CFIA is in charge. They say it's the lead organization. Well, it's the organization in charge is dictating the terms to the RCMP, and that's what's going on here. But you know what struck me as I listened to this is that I don't know who Katie's referring to in terms of being criticized for saying, Jim Kerr did what he had to do, and that Jim Kerr was just feeding the ostriches. Yeah, I think he probably knew that there would be consequences, but I'm not sure where the criticism is coming from. And, as somebody who covered the Freedom Convoy protest from the beginning till the very end, I remember it wasn't at all clear sometimes who the protest organizers were referring to when they said, we're getting pushback on this, or people are criticizing us on social media, because it was very much an ad hoc operation. Nobody designed this protest. It just sort of unfurled itself. So sometimes when you're in the midst of a protest, you just have to focus on what's coming from, shall we say, the media that doesn't like you. And that means the CBC, Global. Well, Global hasn't been that bad. Certainly, the mainstream media, newspapers, the dailies have been very hostile. And you focus on those new and independent media that are reporting your story, as far as you're concerned, accurately. But you can't focus on everybody in social media, because there are people out there who will criticize you no matter what you say or do. And as I've gone through social media and some of the incredible comments from people who just are really hostile towards this farm, towards Katie, and are accusing her of all kinds of ridiculous and horrible things. Sometimes you just have to ignore that and say, we're going to march on. We're going to march on because that's what we need to do. Now, I want to show you the only person on scene right now, as far as I can tell, is Chris Dacey, who, if you watch social media, and we've featured his work on this station quite a bit, he's the guy that stands outside of the House of Parliament Hill and sort of tracks down the Liberal cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister coming out, and he asks those rather uncomfortable questions. And he's been covering a lot of the Palestinian protests in Ottawa too. So this is, I think, a rather new experience for him, going on scene and covering this. But he's the only guy there. So I want to show his last report, because that's about, all we have at the moment. Let's have a look at this.
Hey, Casey here. Some patrols going on in the field, not too much going on. Drone just landed. It's normal operations. It's not normal, but it's normal around here. The RCMP have been a little bit touchy the last little bit. So we had the arrest of Jim and Mike Quigley the other day. Before that, there's some RCMP officers who are none too happy and seem to have been kind of inflaming things a little bit with some of the supporters and whatnot. So I've just been kind of trying to stay away from too much of that, but it is interesting. Saw not long ago, it looked like the commander here, the RCMP commander, having a powwow with most of the officers. So maybe they were addressing that, but there has been some complaints and a number of issues and concerns raised by some of the behavior and antics of the RCMP here. So, I mean, sometimes it's new officers come in and they're a little touchy. Maybe sometimes people have been here too long. Could be a lot of reasons for that. I know I've been here a little while, and I'm tired. I'm tired, and it's things are not always easy here, and so I can understand, I guess, how frustrations can get a little heated. But it's not something that's usual, and it's certainly not something we want to see escalate or continue. So hopefully those few incidents are one-offs, and we won't have to deal with that kind of thing anymore. But I'm one to get heated sometimes too. There's things you see around here that it's like impossible not to get heated about. We're all only human, so. Hopefully things calm down. I got the camera out here. As long as the rain holds off, going to see what I can see. But other than that, I don't have much else today. I will have more coming tonight. I'm jumping on a panel with it's like a big panel. Chris Barber, Arthur Pulowski, Chris Harbert. I'm missing someone, I think. Hosted by Jason Levine and Nico Logan. So I'll be putting that up to I guess my ex, and then all the other guys should be streaming it as well. So if you want to check in and see how all those guys are doing, and maybe a little update from here, stay tuned or tune into that later tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific time. JC from Universal Ostrich Farms.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. There's some good news coming in the polling right now. And this is the latest Abacus data poll, which I generally think is the most accurate. Abacus is predicting 158 seats for the Conservatives if the election were held tomorrow. 150 seats for the Liberals, the Bloc 30, NDP 3 seats. Now this is interesting because this is completely, well, not completely, it's dissimilar to another poll released, and I'll show you that in a minute, that suggests the NDP is surging. And I find it fascinating. This poll has them down to political extinction, basically, losing another 4 seats. They don't even have official party status right now. So if this is what they're looking at, don't expect the NDP to be bolting for a new election and supporting a potential conservative minority. But we'll look at this, and there's another poll down here, which I'll show you. I want to plaudits to BC Barracuda, who put this out a couple of days ago, and I missed it until this morning. And this is fascinating because here she says they want the ostriches dead and stop. The bird flu is too profitable to end. vaccines bought, fear campaigns unleashed, media on standby to push the next poke. Simple for those the World Health Organization are paying attention, and for those who are profiting. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. So I had to look at this here, and there is more of a push on right now to have every farm worker vaccinated for avian flu. Why do you think this Canadian Food Inspection Agency doesn't want to admit there's such a thing as herd immunity? Kill them all. Don't test them. Because if we admit there's herd immunity, maybe we don't have to buy billions of dollars of vaccines around the world and Canada. And this is interesting. Prime Minister Mark Carney is financially invested in the human vaccine against the bird flu. Well, we're not sure. The verdict is still out whether or not Mark Carney is personally invested in bird flu vaccine. From what I could see this morning, and I did quite a thorough, comprehensive search, it's doubtful. It's doubtful this is one time it might not be a conflict of interest. But notice it was the Trudeau government that bought this avian influenza vaccine from a United Kingdom company, from GSK. And the question, of course, is, were Liberals at the time invested in this? I wonder, because that was the Trudeau government was one of the most corrupt governments in history until the Mark Carney government came online. So, this is worth continuing to look into. And I think, I love that BC Barracuda. That's just such a great name. And I showed you yesterday Ezra Levant's attempt to ask a question of the health minister about the ostriches, and he was completely sidelined, ignored. And this is incredible. The CFIA maintains that even healthy-looking birds can carry and spread the disease, including possible new mutations, in a ridiculous, unscientific statement. These are talking points. Anyone might potentially catch a disease in the future and could spread it. If the CFIA thinks the birds are super spreaders carrying it, then test the ostriches. Otherwise, they cannot know and are making it up because they have not tested. Why won't they test? What are they hiding? Do better at global news. Don't just regurgitate government talking points. At least do a fact check, and they won't do that. And we showed you this great video earlier, and this is wonderful. This is wonderful. And thanks for the shout out from Joe Warmington. And I think he mentions the people who have been doing most of the footwork on this story. And he's done some himself, of course. But yeah, Chris Dacey, who's on scene, myself, Ezra Levant, Drea Humphrey, and Wright Blend. Yeah. And of course, Viva Fry, who has done some fantastic reporting on this story and is dogged and determined to see this to the. Don't you love that? They're still telling me to follow the Canadian Food Inspection Agency every day. Safeguard, and you know what they're about? They're about safeguarding food, animals, and plants in Canada. Oh, if we could believe that. All right, here we go. Here's another poll. This is even better news for the Conservatives. I'll tell you why. 159 seats, 142 seats. It's still a minority government. But the NDP in this poll are at 14 seats. That's double what they have right now. That would give them back official party status. And it might be a good enough reason for the NDP to say, well, maybe a new election would be a good idea. And believe me, folks, that might be the only way we avoid Mark Carney's draconian censorship laws, the gun grab that's aimed against Canadian farmers, the digital ID that Carney's toying with, and a lot of other surveillance legislation that's coming down the pike. So this, to me, is a good reason for the NDP to say, well, maybe we don't want to invest too much in this Carney government. And I would suggest they don't. And I love this post from Tom Kirby. I've read stories of other animal thefts and destruction of animals. Those were generally by SPCA groups. They like to use illegal, expired, or unsigned warrants. They love to exceed the legal terms of the warrants. This is another group just like them. All right, so what is Tom saying there? This is exactly what Gerry Ritz said to me today. Where's the SPCA? Well, the SPCA is no longer in the business of protecting animals. They're in the business of protecting their bureaucracy. This is what happens to government agencies. They lose perspective. They forget what their raison d'etre was. They forget what their principles, policies, objectives were supposed to be. And maybe they once were, but they're all about their own agenda and protecting their behinds. And in the case of the CFIA, it's become nothing except a mobile death squad. And this to me is incredible. We covered this extensively. I invite you to have a look at it again yesterday. Is Mark Carney and the RCMP friendly? Oh boy, are they ever. And I invite you again to look at that Supreme Court of Canada order. It granted the CFIA custody of the animals, it did not tell them carry on like you're going to kill them. It stayed the execution. And this is what the CFIA understands very well, but they're deliberately defying the Supreme Court of Canada. What the heck is wrong with this? Sorry, I couldn't show you this video the other day from this hour, his 22 minutes, because I put it in the broadcast and I got copyright violation. All right, can you believe it? First of all, Canadian taxpayers are paying for this abysmal show on a network that's even worse. This is a CBC program that you pay for, but they have copyright status. We can't use their material without being dinged for copyright. That to me is beyond reason. So let's come back to our other reality here. Want to show you this. There's a Conservative MP who's found a reason to live. Oh, thank you. Here we go. Yeah, this is Angela Rasmussen, again, who has called, Katie said she's called her a cult leader. Rasmussen has called Katie Pisitne a cult leader of what? Some sort of ostrich religion? I don't know, but she hasn't been too careful with that. The risk that BC ostriches could spread flu is low, but call still warranted, experts say. And that is, we have shown you this story in the past. This is the so-called expert that the CBC and other mainstream media love to quote. And she's always presented as somebody with no political axe to grind at all. She doesn't have any skin in this game in terms of being politically active, politically concerned. Ideology means nothing. It's all about the science. Except when you find out she's not even Canadian. She's a U.S. Comes from the U.S. Has accused broadcasters she doesn't agree with as being extremist right-wingers if they don't like her, if they don't like what she says, and has had the absolute gall to suggest she's apolitical, even though if you look at her X site, she says she's a cheerleader for vaccines. So So I want to get to yeah. Yeah, I may have missed one of these slides earlier, but that is I want to get to this other story. Aaron Gunn, who's doing a terrific job here.
Aaron Gunn here, Member of Parliament for North Island Powell River. I'm standing here just outside the Powell River Hydroelectric Dam. And the reason why I'm here is to share with all of you that I have formally submitted a letter, it's gotten a little bit wet, to Canada's energy regulator, officially opposing the proposal by Brookfield Investments, which has somehow come to own this dam, from exporting all of the power to the United States with almost no benefit staying here in the community, the province, or the country. And I'm happy to stand with, there's been hundreds of people that have reached out to share their opposition to this project, and including the mayor and city council, including the local First Nation, and many business groups. You know, the story of this dam is that it was built to provide power to the pulp mill, which created thousands of jobs here in Powell River and hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. Unfortunately, the pulp mill is gone, but the dam is still here. And as long as it is here and it is using a finite natural resource, it is my belief that it should benefit first and foremost the people that live in the region, the province, and our country. And we should not be allowing a foreign-owned corporation to exploit that resource, send it out of country, and then essentially pocket all of the profits for themselves. So that is why I'm opposing it. That is also why, as early as next week, I will be officially submitting a petition in the House of Commons, signed by so many of the residents in Powell River, to register our opposition to it.
I want to return to this slide here because this could be the crux of the whole matter in some ways. Why does CFIA refuse to test the birds? Well, they have a lot of ridiculous reasons because, well, we did test last December. Why do we have to do them again? And that, of course, makes absolutely no sense. Everybody with half a brain can realize that. The other reason is it's too expensive. Even though the dictates, the regulations they claim to be following from the World Health Organization is saying that testing is essential, is integral to the process. You can't just keep destroying animals because you don't want to test them. And this is not an argument. And I would remind you when Gerry Ritz and I were talking about this last week, Gerry pointed out the testing all the birds, and he said the procedure and the capacity is there. So I think he knows what he's talking about. The procedure and the capacity exists right now. He said the cost would be about $100,000. And he said they're probably spending that every day anyway. And moreover, there have been offers from members of the private sector to pay for the testing. And as Gerry also said, I can't wrap my head around it. Why don't they want to do the testing, even if they can get it done for nothing? Well, obviously, it's got something to do with the fact they're covering up the fact that there was never an issue here. There was never a problem here. This has always been about propagating a false crisis so that the vaccine can be marketed more effectively. Not just for the animals, but for the people working on the farm. And we have seen this. This is where this is going. And this is why the Liberal government, yes, it was still a Trudeau government at that time, bought so much of this avian influenza vaccine. It was all about satisfying the demands of big pharma. And they don't want to get caught in this huge lie. They don't want to admit that they've been telling you all along that there's no crisis, that they know there's no crisis here. They know that. You know that. The Canadian people know that. And the more we look at this, the more we realize that this has been a cover-up from day one. And this warrant to search that they've come up with, this has been used to continue the occupation not only of the farm, but of the adjacent farm that grows garlic. Yes, they're related to Katie and her mother, but what if your brother-in-law or your brother or your cousin happened to have a house next to you? Why would the CFIA or any government agency automatically assume they have rights to that property as well, even when they don't even have clearly defined rights to occupy your property? They certainly don't have the right to occupy your neighbor's property and to start building roads upon it. And that's exactly what has happened here. And it's been a complete repudiation of basic foundational rights in this country. That's very true. Our Charter of Rights doesn't specifically guarantee property rights, but by convention, by protocol, by history, by precedent, we do enjoy private property rights in Canada. Otherwise, we would be a communist country. And I always encourage whatever government is in power, we need to get that in the Constitution and the Charter of Rights. However, we know that any government that decides they can usurp all of that law by invading and occupying your property and your neighbors, there's something drastically wrong with the mentality here. And I think that is quite clear to anybody who's followed the story. So where are we now? All right. Saw a story this morning suggesting that a Supreme Court decision on this could be weeks away, perhaps even a month. I will say again that this farm doesn't have weeks and months to wait for a Supreme Court decision, because we see what the CFIA has been doing in the absence of that decision. They have been carrying on as if they were not told to stay the execution. They have been carrying on as if they're anticipating a yes decision or a no decision from the Supreme Court, that they will not assess or hear the case from Universal Ostrich Farms. And they are proceeding as if they have been not told to do anything. They're ignoring the Supreme Court of Canada. They're ignoring the law. They're getting away with literal killing of these ostriches. And there has been no punitive back. And they are acting with complete impunity. And they have become a poster child for this Liberal government's contempt for democratic values in this country, because they really, really aren't too concerned about where this is going, as long as they continue to maintain their little empire. And that's all it really has anything to do about in the end. So we're going to keep monitoring this situation every day, because this farm doesn't have 2 weeks. We need a political decision. And as Gerry Ritz also said the other day, as somebody who was minister 8 years, Heath MacDonald, the current Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, could say today or tomorrow, okay, get off the farm, CFIA. We're changing course. This is no longer worthwhile for anybody, including not just this farm, but the government of Canada is looking increasingly stupid and idiotic every day. So they need to get out of there. And the minister can make that decision at any time. This can be a political decision. This is not before the courts, because it was a political decision to invade and occupy that farm at the beginning of this process, to pursue charges. And it can be a political decision to say enough is enough, we have to get out, because this is not working anymore. I'll be right back after we have a look at the merchandise. you know, thanks for watching today. I appreciate your support and your viewership. Have a look at the store. We've got some great merchandise there, and I'm quite proud of it. And next week, or this beginning, we're going to be looking more at your comments and your super chats, especially. Going to make a priority of that. We'll continue to watch the news, not just at the ostrich farm, but here in Ottawa. But you understand, I've said from the very beginning, this is a vital story, because it's not just about this one farm. It's about your private property. It's about your right to enjoy your private property, to enjoy the things you own as a farmer, to have the right to possess your livestock and to have a livelihood. And this is what the Mark Carney government is destroying. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Bye for now.